I'm really encouraged by the fact that you took time out of your lives to have this very important conversation. For whatever reason you're here, it inspires me, even though my job is to try to inspire you, that you're concerned, that you care, and it tells me that you're already engaged. And really that's my role tonight, is to talk about how to be civically engaged. And that term can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But at its core, really, civic engagement is simple. It's that we show up for one another in a shared society. It's the way we serve each other. It's how we make our communities stronger through speaking out, getting involved, which will make our democracy all the more resilient. At the Connecticut Democracy Center, we just believe inspiring people to take civic action and to be engaged in their communities and make positive change. Personally, I think that our society has become a little bit more isolated, a little less socially engaged. I think we can see it with our kids. I sometimes think we can see it with ourselves. Such factors as technology, this little thing called the pandemic, I think it's isolated us in many ways. And I think it's been a downward trend over a long period of time, but I do think the good news is we can turn this around. And my concern is if we don't turn it around and our systems of local, state, and federal government continue to spiral into a little bit greater dysfunction, the divisions between different people groups will grow, and America could become a lot less relevant. But again, the good news is that the road back isn't as hard as you think. And there are many options besides making the sacrifice to run for office like Sujata has, which is incredible. But your voice and your actions will make a difference, and it's really easy to begin. So I'm probably preaching to the choir when I say this, but why does civic engagement matter? Well, because our current system of government really demands it, where it's not to be run on autopilot. It requires what we call participation, getting involved. The active involvement of ordinary people, just like you and me, who care enough to pay attention, to speak up, to take action, and to help solve problems. The truth is, if you don't engage, someone else will. Right? And their values, their priorities will fill the space where yours might have been. So that's why it's important. So civic engagement is really about taking ownership. It's about claiming your role in shaping the future instead of watching it happen. So I want to frame what civic engagement is and make it more practical and understandable. I think about civic engagement as having three dimensions: civic skills, civic behaviors, and civic actions. And each builds upon the other. And I want to take them just one by one. So let's just start with civic skills, which I would define as the abilities that allow you to navigate and influence civic life. And they're things like this. First, understanding how government works, knowing which level of government is responsible for what issues. Now, we all know there's local, state, and federal, but I think we might all agree that local government is really where the issues and the laws that are decided really affect your everyday life, and it's a great place to get involved. So understanding how your local government works is a great place to start. Another thing that you can do in terms of civic skills in understanding government is learn how to track those issues that you care about the most and how they make their way through the system. Many people are talking a lot about AI and the dangers of it, but there's also some really good things that it can do. AI can enable you to type in an issue and ask a question: what are all the laws pertaining to bicycle helmets here in the state of Connecticut? And it can give you a really great list of how the laws have been formed and even what might be currently before the legislature. So it's a really good tool that you can consider using as you do that. Learn how to read a bill. Learn, even more basic, how a bill becomes a law, right? It's because when you do, you really learn about what your opportunities are to speak up and interject in that process. And know who your local officials are, right? If I asked you today, who's your state representatives, Would you know? I ask that question a lot of some of my friends, and they don't. And then if you do, that is awesome, and I applaud you. So then I would ask, who's your mayor? Who's your first selectman? If you do not know that answer, please find out. And then please introduce yourself to them, because they will represent you, and they're there to help, and they want to listen to you, right? So a little bit more about civic skills. Another thing that comes under that topic is critical thinking and information literacy. In other words, stay informed, but do it wisely, right? Be able to sort fact from fiction, evidence from opinion. I don't know what you do for news and how you get your information, but I encourage you to certainly read across multiple sources and ask yourself questions as you read. Who's writing this article? What known biases maybe do they have? What is the evidence that they're giving you to support the claims that they're making, right? Ask questions, be skeptical, as Dan was sharing a little earlier. That picture you saw of so-and-so standing with another person, is it, unfortunately today we talk about the good things of AI, well there's unfortunately some bad things, right? And how it can manipulate images. So before you believe that image, check it out. Make sure that's actually a real image. And you say, well, Paul, how do I do that? Well, there are a lot of fact-checking tools that are easily accessible and available to you to do that. And out front on the desk, out front where a member of the League of Women Voters was sitting, there's a short handout that gives you a whole list of different options that you can search, widely available, to actually fact-check information before you share it. And that's the important part. And if any of you are using social media to get your information, I would please ask you not to do that, because I think we've seen it's a great platform for finding and connecting with friends and family, but in terms of getting reliable, solid information, not so much. The last thing I would say under civic skills would just be communication, and that's discussing issues respectfully, listening to others, and attempt to find common ground. That's what we call civic discourse, right? Talk to someone who sees the world differently from you with intent to actually listen and not really respond. I mean, that's a civic muscle I think we all need to learn how to exercise again. There's an old adage, seek first to understand and then be understood. And I think if we're going to get back to a civic discourse, that's the way we need to approach it and do it respectfully. Listen, Thanksgiving is coming up, and I don't know about you, but there's going to be people around my table who are going to think and act very differently from me. And that might be the next best opportunity to dive in and just say, tell me why you think that. Tell me why you believe that. Why do you feel that way? And where'd you get your information from? And I think that asking those types of questions can open up a productive and respectful dialogue. These are all practices and practical and learnable skills that I think we can all learn to use. Second thing I want to talk about then is civic behaviors. If civic skills are what you know, civic behaviors are what you do on a regular basis. They're basically your habits, right? So let's talk about a few examples of that. Voting in every election, all right? That's a habit. No matter local, state, national, mark your calendars, encourage others to do the same, and please, if you have kids, please bring them at a young age so they see you doing it and they develop that habit as well. And if you say to me, Paul, I voted and I don't think that it matters, well, let me share this with you. In 2002, here in the state of Connecticut in Torrington, the race there between the Democratic and Republican seat was decided by just one vote. Even earlier than that, sooner than that, in 2022, in Southington, the same state house seat race was decided by just one vote. I was speaking with the Secretary of the State, Stephanie Thomas, this past weekend, and she was just telling me how many races are actually decided by less than 5 votes. So yes, your vote does matter, so please do that. Another civic behavior, attending community meetings or testifying at a public hearing for an issue that you care about. Attend a city council meeting, a school board session, or a public forum. I think you'll be amazed at just how accessible Local democracy really is. And if you're not sure how to find out about that, at the state level, the Connecticut General Assembly publishes a bulletin on their website, which, when they're in session, will tell you about every public hearing and every meeting that's taking place and every bill that they're going to be discussing, so you can come and share your opinion and how that potential law may impact your lives. And on your city web pages, your town web pages, they also have and list their meetings, so it's all accessible. The next thing I would say to you for a behavior would be volunteering for causes that align with your values. Homeless shelters, food drives, senior centers, animal shelters, or help volunteer during elections. I think the League of Women Voters would like that. That doesn't mean you have to be a poll worker, but there's so much need that goes on behind the scenes that you can participate in. You know, many towns actually publish on their websites what the volunteer opportunities are. So I strongly encourage you to look at that. And honestly, I know how busy you are. We're all very busy. And if you don't have the time, maybe you would consider supporting a local nonprofit that does that kind of work. And that's something you can certainly consider. And then for the nonprofits, go. And just something, and then last under this topic, civic behaviors, even a small act, you know, something we don't think about, like helping a neighbor shovel their sidewalk when the snow's coming and we know that it's coming, or supporting local journalism, picking up the trash around your neighborhood when you see it. That's civic engagement. How about this? Host a block party. That's civic engagement. Do you know your neighbors to invite them? That's another question I ask a lot of people. Do you know your neighbors? And the answer I get, well, yeah, I know who they are, and I wave to them as I'm pulling out of the driveway in the morning. But do you actually spend the time to get to know them? Well, one of the things I do is I like to vegetable garden. And I grow as many vegetables as I can with the explicit intent of handing them out to my neighbors, because I want to get to know them. I want to be a part of the community. I want them to know that I'm interested in who they are and what they do. Block parties are a great way to do that. And for me, that's fun. And civics can be fun. So I encourage you to do that. And those behaviors build trust, they build connections, and they create the civic culture that our democracy depends on. And then lastly, let me just touch upon civic actions. And those are where the skills and the behaviors come together in visible collective impact. So these are the efforts that make a difference beyond your individual contributions. Civic actions can be things such as identifying a local issue that you care about and organize some people to help you solve that problem. Something tangible, right? Like safer crosswalks or youth programs or an environmental cleanup. Or you can collaborate. Partner up with an existing organization if you're like, well, Paul, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't know that I can step out in that kind of way. But that's okay, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Join a board or a neighborhood association. There are so many issues in your own community that need your help. Transit, finance, education, housing, the arts. You can submit your interest on your local town websites, and they'll put you through the process. And even something that I really feel strongly about, and that is investigate some local social organizations right there in your community who already have plans and a vision for how to make a difference in your community. These are those organizations whose names maybe you don't hear about a lot lately because participation has really fallen off. That's the Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis, the League of Women Voters, Knights of Columbus. They would love to see you walking through the door and say, I'm here to help. And boy, would they put you to work. So certainly consider that. Listen, I know this takes time and it can be hard work. But this is the necessary work so that places where we live, where we work, where our kids go to school can be shaped by our voices. So for me, in closing, I want to say that I want to invite you to think about civic engagement not as a duty, but really as a privilege, a chance to help shape the community and the country that you love. And listen, let's be real. If you don't participate, government won't stop. It will continue. But I think it becomes less efficient, less transparent, and less representative. And I think that leads to a loss of trust in government, to apathy, and to further disengagement. I would also say, mentor the next generation. I mentioned that earlier. Invite a young person that you know into the process. If you're going to go and participate in something civically, bring somebody along with you. As I mentioned, demonstrate this to your kids or to your children, to your nieces, to your nephews. Lead by example. They need to see this. Democracy future depends on them. So in summary, learn the skills, practice the behaviors, take the actions. If you can do just one thing in this upcoming year, just one thing, then you're going to make a difference, and it will only grow from there. And because democracy is not something we have, it's something that we do. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Let's give Dan, Paul, Sujata another hand. That was very good. Thank you.